Good evening, everyone. I'll ask all of you to remain muted. Dr. Johari Samad will join us at 8. Yeah, the technical team is just making sure that the audio, the visuals, and the connection to YouTube are all in order. Okay. Now, there's still quite a number of places in the Zoom room. So if you have friends who want to get in, they still can get in. Otherwise, those of you who are going to be watching on YouTube, if you have questions, those of you watching on YouTube, if you have questions, you can type your questions into the chat box. A member of my team is also watching on YouTube. He will pick up those questions, and those questions will be WhatsApp to me. And subject to the availability of time, we'll see whether we can get those questions across to Joe tonight. Yeah. Now, I'll start at about 7:58. Quickly, sort of bring us all into the mood of the questions that I want to put to Joe, and Joe will join us at about 8 p.m. tonight. Okay. So I'll be back with you all shortly. Quickly share with all of you, 2010 January, I landed in Kota Kinabalu to speak at a forum. And that was actually my first visit to Sabah. And I was very taken aback to hear from one of the other forum speakers. Number one, that contrary to what we've been taught in school, Sabah and Sarawak were not intended under the Malaysia Agreement to be the 12th and 13th states of the Federation. They were in fact intended to be independent sovereign nations. And number two, one of the speakers said, Sabah, Sarawak dianiayai orang Melayu. Now, after I had gotten over my shock and I began to investigate, I was so troubled to find that much of those allegations were true. And the most perhaps damning of all was this, that since 1963, much of that which was provided for under the Malaysia Agreement of 1963 that was supposed to go to Sabah and Sarawak never reached our brothers and sisters there. In reality, they have been kept in the dark, and the wealth of both Sabah and Sarawak have been hijacked to Semenanjung. Very little going back to Sabah and Sarawak, to the point where World Bank in 2010 described them as the poorest, when in fact, in terms of natural resources, they are the richest. Now, it's 8 o'clock. Joe, can I ask you to join us by switching on your camera and also to unmute yourself? Joe, hi Joe. Can you hear me, Joe?
I can hear you clearly. Can you hear me?
Lovely. All right. Okay. I can hear you, and your visual is superb. Okay. Thanks, Joe, for joining us this evening. I was just sharing with the members of the audience. Yeah. I was sharing with the members of the audience how in 2010 January, when I first went to Sabah, and I was shocked to discover that, contrary to what they taught us in school, Sabah and Sarawak were never intended under the agreement to be the 12th and 13th states. They were intended to be sovereign nations, number one. Number two, that since 1963, practically everything that was supposed to be delivered to Sabah and Sarawak under the Malaysia Agreement has never been honored. All right. Now, Joe, I didn't ask you to join us tonight for a history lesson on the Malaysia Agreement. I think that's something we can all look into, and maybe we can have another session at another date after the elections. What's pressing for me, and I hope my brothers and sisters in Semenanjung, is to understand and to perhaps hear from somebody who's from Sabah or Sarawak as to what are those deliverables that ought to get to Sabah and Sarawak that are most pressing, and to perhaps prioritize that long list. Because let's be honest, if we were to just make that very general demand to the new incoming government, and we are all hoping that it's a government that's going to listen to us, and that's a government that's going to be committed to delivering to Sabah and Sarawak what's due to them. So I'm hoping, Joe, that you can share with us your thoughts on what are the most pressing deliverables. All right, but before we get into that, Joe, take a few minutes. There may be some in the audience who either overlooked or were just too lazy to go and do a little bit of Googling to find out a little bit about you. Share a little bit about yourself, Joe. Please, over to you.
Well, good evening. First of all, Haris, thank you very much for inviting me for this talk. It's a great pleasure. And you're well-known, whatever, agitator or what, but what you do for the country is very good. I mean, we need to get this kind of discussions going and to point out all the weaknesses and the mistakes they have made over the past. So anyway, thanks for inviting me again, and we hope we can have a very good discussions tonight. Myself, basically, I was from the oil and gas industry, from the commercial sector or business sector. And when I took an early retirement, I was headhunted by the former Chief Minister, Musa Aman, and brought to Yayasan Sabah to start many things. One of the projects he asked me to look into was development of oil and gas industry for Sabah, which I took on with great challenges, because Petronas controls everything in the oil and gas industry. Anyway, we succeeded in many aspects. I don't want to talk so much about the success stories and all that. But when I retired from Yayasan Sabah after 10 years of service, I think I'm the only one that from the private sector masuk GLC. Normally from GLC, the people go the other way. Sorry, I mean from private sector move to the government. Normally people go the other way, from government to private sector. So, but it's what I learned so much is what's the difference between the public sector and the government sectors. The pros and cons, the weaknesses and the strength of each sections of the government. So anyway, after that, I traveled around the world and with my wife, and then decided to start writing in 2017, and I found out that hey, I'm not a bad writer. People do read what I write and all that, and gradually I was given the opportunity through contacts like other writers. Karim Raslan introduced me to Jabar of Malaysia Insight, and I started writing for Malaysia Insight. Then I started writing for our local newspaper, Daily Express, our main newspaper, and then I move on to FMT. I'm also one of those commentator reporter always asks you what's your opinion and all that. And I also contributed a chapter on MA63 in particular in Bridget Welsh book, Sabah from the Ground, which is in the bookstore. Chapter 2 is written by me,
Right.
So if you want to know a little more about the history of MA63, beli tu buku lah and baca, as a start. So that's basically what I'm all about. Yeah.
I think, Joe, correct me if I'm mistaken. I do not know whether you still are, but I think Gerak Independent at its early infancy, you were also involved there in one way or the other. Would that be correct?
First of all, my connection with Peninsular Malaysia is through G25. I joined them first, and then later on, Gerak Independent started by Siti Kasim under Maju earlier.
Yes.
And then the platform for going to independent election or being independent, contesting in elections is through Gerak Independent. So Siti Kasim under Maju asked me to be one of the advisors. So she sent me a form. Okay lah, I said advisor, tulis saja lah. Okay, akun. So that's how I became advisor. And then Taufik started Malaysia first, as you know. I think
Malaysia first, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I resigned 3 times, and I think I was put back 3 times because I felt that we were not getting anywhere. But the most important part of Malaysia first was that we tried to put together Peninsula.
It's like Hotel California. You can't check out.
Yeah, true. So the whole idea is to bring East and West together.
Yes.
To understand each other. That was the noble objective of Malaysia about the first. And
actually,
sorry.
You mentioned that bringing East and West together. In fact, the number one reform pillar is to end divisive politics. And whilst normally we talk about divisive, we think immediately about the race and religion that is always brought up by UMNO and sometimes PAS. We should not overlook that there's also the division of keeping orang Semenanjung so far removed from our brothers and sisters in Sabah and Sarawak. So that we do not really understand, first of all, the culture there, and also, more importantly, I think the economic and educational opportunities that are deprived.
Yeah.
So I think that is one other division we should look to overcome in the long term.
Yeah, so I felt it was my duty as an East Malaysian to bring the subject of MA63 to KL. And I actually brought Zainal Ajaiman, for example, one of I think Zainal, right? The late Zainal.
Yes.
We met J25, and we also met the captains of industry at the Lake Club, I remember, hosted by Taufik. Okay.
Yes.
So that's how we started trying to introduce MA63 to KL side Peninsula, and then also through Gerak Independent. And Gerak has adopted the pillar number 2, if I'm mistaken, as MA63 as one of the pillars lah. Okay.
In fact, the entire 5 pillars is a mirror of what Gerak Independent is running with.
Yes, exactly. So I think I've done a lot of work with my Peninsula counterparts to educate them, to get them interested in MA63 and all that. Okay, the Sabah government never thanked me for that. I mean, I was the bridge, and I also talked to former Chief Minister Shafi Abdal also about all these issues that we need to bring to KL.
Well, tonight, Joe, I'm hoping that you can educate us on this, Joe. Now, I'm sure the people of Sabah, the people of Sarawak, and you, Joe, are tired of every new government coming in and saying, all right, we'll set up a working committee to look into blah, 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 blah. It's the same thing over and over again. Yeah. So we don't want to see that repeat. We have come up with this 5-pillar reform agenda all on one page and all achievable in a term of a committed, responsible government. But what we want, and this is why I'm hoping, Joe, you can help us out with this. We are hoping that you can tell us, okay, Haris, folks, from the many things that I've used to the people of Sabah and Sarawak, these are the ones that are of immediate priority. Why? Because once you list it down for us, when the candidates come knocking on our doors asking for our vote, we are going to take this, what you have put before us, to say, what is your stand on this? Number one. And how do you propose to work with us to see this realized in the next term of government? Now, if you happen to be government backbencher, very good. We pressure the government. If you are opposition, tell us how you propose, and we will work with you on this. Now, if Pakatan Harapan forms the next government, God willing, we are all hoping for that. I'm fairly confident that if cancer does not get to me first, I'm going to work to push these that you are going to list now, Joe, to take to the government to say, we want this before the next election, we put into place.
Yeah.
Right. So it's on that note, Joe. Now, friends who are watching this, I have switched on the comments, the chat box. If you have questions, you can type them in the chat box. I will pick them up, and if time permits, we will get Joe to address them. Before that, Joe, can I get you to help us? You list out for us the priorities on the deliverables that ought to be getting to Sabah and Sarawak under the Malaysia Agreement.
Yeah.
What do you do? The floor is yours.
Okay. First of all, I don't want to go to the historical part, like you already mentioned, that people can read about that, and a lot of activists macam DNA 63 di Sabah lah, and then Warisan pun ada their own unit on MS63. And there are many activists involved, okay, including my wife lah. Di rumah pun marah-marah selalu, not getting development funds and so on. So that aside, I'm a researcher and a writer, okay. So for me to understand MS63, what are the issues? Because banyak issue, okay. You can get very confused and you can get lost in this subject, okay. But I'm very focused because I'm already at that age where, you don't have many years left, okay? You probably have longer life than me, Haris. But the thing is, when you have so much time left on Earth, you need to be focused on what you want with MS63. Okay? You don't have the time to talk about the Queen of England, what she promised, and what Tunku Abdul Rahman promised, and that kind of thing, all right? So the best way for me as a researcher is to go through all the headlines of the newspaper all the few years, from people like Jeffrey Kittingan, Max Honkili, Mahathir, all these people who mention about MS63. And my conclusion is very simple. It's all the talk is about revenue. Let's not get confused, okay? Development funds. Every budget, we come up with this issue, okay? I mean, the current budget 223, for example, they allocate something like 50 billion for MRT3, if I'm not mistaken, all right? And the allocation for Sabah and Sarawak is 11 billion. Now, coming back to MS63, as you mentioned earlier about, what's so special about Sabah and Sarawak, we are a partner of Malaysia, lain dari 11 states. We are a partner, okay? So means we are above all these other 11 states, and we have a special status as partner. So the original partner, kalau kita faham, Singapore, Great Britain, Ireland, and Malaya sama Sabah Sarawak. Okay, Singapore smart lah, they cabut awal in 65 and left us hanging. So that's another story. Okay, so now it's Sabah and Sarawak and former Malaya lah. Malaya doesn't exist anymore. Federation Malaya doesn't exist. Okay, so basically we are talking about Kuala Lumpur lah, or Putrajaya to be exact. So people like Jeffrey kata, after budget, let's split the money lah, 50 to federal territory, 25 to Sabah Sarawak, which I think is quite a tall order lah. Tapi the fact is, we want, as Sabah Sarawak, we are open-hearted. We want to share with our brothers and sisters, our Peninsula Malaysia. They don't understand that. We are open to sharing, tapi we also want our fair share in development fund. Okay, so every budget, our leaders, bitch about the lack of funds for development, all that. But if you look at the statistics and the fact, okay, we are the richest state in Malaysia, tapi we are also the poorest. So it's a paradox, rich but poor. I've been pointing this out so many times. Kenapa oil and gas state Sabah Sarawak yang the richest are the poorest state? Okay, Sabah is the worst lah, because we're number one. Okay? Bukankah malu kah kita orang Sabah? You pun tanya the world, or World Bank pun tanya, where you come from? Oh, I come from the poorest state of Malaysia. Why is that? It's something that we should be ashamed of, yes, but it's something that we should rectify most of all. Okay, so the issue now, election time, kan? Pakatan Harapan 2018, May 2018, May 9th, I still remember the date. Mahathir kata, we give you 20% oil royalty. Okay, wah, semua orang Sabah Sarawak tepuk tangan, so wow, we get 20%. Now currently, if people don't know, we're getting 5% cash payment, okay, dari federal government. Okay, they take 95% lah. I don't want to know how they break down 95%, but the fact is 95 and 5. You have to understand. So we only get 5%. Sama juga Sarawak. Okay, and this election, dia orang pandai. Now they said, oh, kita dapat, we will give you DPM post, okay, Prime Minister satu from KL, and then DPM Sabah Sarawak. But when it comes to revenue part, they're silent. Okay, so let's talk about revenue. One is the 40% tax sharing, which is in the Constitution. Okay, I can see some lawyers on our talk tonight. Okay, for 20%, straightforward. Baca Constitution. It's up to you lah, to how you interpret it, because lawyer ni, you put 10 lawyers in the room, pun 10 different opinion. But the fact is, it's in the Constitution. Okay, the 40% revenue sharing is in the Constitution. There's no dispute about it. What is so hard now for the state government and the federal government to sit down together? Okay, let's interpret it this way. Okay, and this is how you can share it. Tapi this Tengku Zafrul pandai lah. He adopted Selangor as a special state when we are the poorest state. Why? Just for his own election purpose, he adopted Kuala Selangor as his own state. Okay, finance minister. What an idiot. Okay, so we always been deprived of all these things. When it comes to the 40%, it's being negotiated lah sekarang. With KL, it's always being negotiated under the committee, MA63 committee. This term 3 kali ke, I think, PN committee, PH committee, sekarang UMNO committee lah, under the former Prime Minister Sabri Yaakob. So banyak committee. So the next election kita, whoever wins, ada committee lagi lah. Anwar will promise a committee, PH. Well, whether you hope PH will win or not, I don't hope for anything, because I know the story will be the same. Cerita sama, okay? And when it comes to oil and gas pun, it's an old story lah. I mean, we get 5%, as I mentioned earlier, and we're still a poor state. Okay, so we want to challenge also the PDA, Petroleum Development Act 1974, where they said Petronas has all the exclusive right to oil and gas, because we want to talk about the continental shelf, the meaning of the continental shelf in legal terms, okay, which territory the oil and gas belong to. I think Peninsula people also pun lupa. Kelantan objected to joining Malaysia. Okay, they took even a legal suit to join Malaysia. All right, And they're so worried about oil and gas. And then how they treated them oil and gas, sama juga lah, I mean, Kelantan went to court. So, but Sabah Sarawak haven't gone to the extent to take them to court, but it will happen. It will happen because we already took this 40% to court under Sabah Law Association. The case is pending under judicial review. So we're all waiting for the outcome. If the judicial review and locus standi is in our favor, then we will take action on the oil and gas. If not the government, we will, as a private entity or NGO, will take it to the government. So basically, to summarize, all this banyak rhetoric cerita pasal MS63. Every day you bangun WhatsApp, banyak cerita, there's not enough water, not enough road, apa tu. And then, but there's also this aspect about autonomy lah. Okay, I mean, autonomy is important, especially in health education. I mean, it's reflected in macam the pandemic situation where we have not been able to make any decisions. Everything is controlled by KL. Health minister, health director, they don't even know about Sabah Sarawak. They have not even been to the remote areas. How do they know? I mean, do they know that people have to walk like 7 days to reach a clinic? And then if the doctor say, oh, I need to see you next month, check out your progress. These people, they only got like $50 in their pocket, walk to see the doctor. Then the doctor asks them to come back and to repeat the same. These people in the federal capital don't understand that, how these people suffer. And during the pandemic, we were short of the for the injections and all that. All the priority went to KL and all that, and then we had to find our own way to import direct from China, and all the people offered from direct China. So we have no rights over certain things, especially health and education. Education sekarang pun, religious education. Malaysia is about religious education, bukan lain lagi cerita. Okay, it's not teaching mathematics and science or even speaking in English. All right, Sarawak has taken a different stance. They built 12 schools teaching in English. Okay, no. They're going ahead. They don't care. All right. Sabah is a bit slow because our connection complications dengan UMNO lah, KL, GRS, KL, which ordinary Sabahans are fed up with them lah. Why we listen to KL all the time and so on. Anyway, that's another cerita lah. But basically, to summarize, it's the 40% revenue, the petroleum resources rights, and autonomy lah. Okay, autonomy to decide a lot of directions that we want to take as a state. Okay, and you talk about keluarga Malaysia. Apa tu keluarga Malaysia? We are not keluarga Malaysia. Okay, as Sabri Yaakob is not my father, not my cousin, not my uncle. All right, so don't talk about keluarga Malaysia. It's all bullshit. Okay, keluarga Malaysia ini is that in a family, also kan. Some favorite will get more. Some people in the family will get more. All right. So this keluarga Malaysia is nonsense. All right. We are different. We're not the part of the family, brother and sister. We are partner. Okay. Like if you divorce your wife, she would want at least 50%. Kan? You want to take less. Right. Analogy. Kan? Yeah. So we don't want to see all this nonsense lah. Keluarga Malaysia, all this propaganda.
If I can step in now, Joe.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm rambling a bit.
No worries. I think we have all enjoyed. And first of all, I understand. I sense your frustration. I understand the frustration. Believe it or not, many of us on this side see the manifest injustice, and we too feel frustrated. And if possible, we want to try to start to see some real change happening on the other side. All right. Now, so let me just come in. Essentially, what I think you've highlighted for us is give us the development funds and the revenue that's due to us so that we can start to develop Sabah. We can start to develop Sarawak, number one. Number two, the autonomy that was promised, that was understood, and this makes so much sense because how can you be a sovereign nation and yet at the same time have the affairs of state dictated by a partner, an external partner from across the South China Sea? So, but just to summarize, in two broad headings, one is autonomy, the other one is revenue development fund. Betul lah?
Betul, yeah.
Okay, I think when you start to talk about the Petroleum Development Act and the continental shelf, as you yourself pointed out, these are things that if you start to get into, this is what actually allows previous governments to say, well, we need to have a committee to look at the nuts and bolts. I like the way you put it, Joe, that it's straightforward. Revenue 40% is provided for under the Constitution.
Correct.
So what nuts and bolts? We don't need nuts and bolts. We just need accountants to look at the accounts and work out what is 40% of what of revenue that was obtained and repatriate that back to Sabah. Would that be right?
That's correct. That's correct. That's straightforward. Okay. Just calculation and how many years back we have to pay.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, this has never been paid since the inception. Would that be right?
Well, I can't comment on it, lad, because there's some about Tunku Zaifrul and all that said, from up to 1976, this has been paid and so on. I'm not looking into that kind. I would leave that to the experts to work it out.
But the official statement is that up to 1976 it has been paid. Is that correct?
That's what they say, lah. I mean, but
okay, tak apa lah. So what we can do is, for a start, we can work 20 years backwards, pay 20 years from 2022 backwards lah. We start that way. Because I want to be able to understand what are the pressure points I need to take to the candidates coming to see us. And when the new government, I hear you, Joe, when you say you tak peduli lah whether it's a Pakatan government or UMNO BN. For me, UMNO BN government is just going to look to continue to pillage and rob what they can.
Yeah.
Pakatan Harapan to me are still too new, number one. And number two, I think many of us still at least have the confidence that we can speak to some of them to begin to deliver on promises. So, well, the old adage like new brooms generally tend to sweep clean. So that's what we are banking on. So now, as far as
I would just, sorry, Haris, I would just say,
go ahead.
I would just say the lesser evil lah when it comes to Pakatan Harapan. Okay, so because for us, any party that scale with promises, okay, it has not delivered. And if you look at all the party leaders today, the same DNA lah. I've been writing dari UMNO, ano write dari UMNO, dari UMNO. So the DNA is still there. Okay, they don't care about Sabah. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, well, somebody has mentioned here in the comments in the chat box the size of Sabah and the size of Peninsular Malaysia. Of course, there's a vast difference. I do not know the point you're trying to make, Azhar. Maybe you could type it out again so that I can have a clearer understanding of the point you're making. Also, Albert here has said a referendum like Scotland. I don't think we need, and maybe you can get in on this, Joe.
No, I've written about referendum. Like the only referendum prior to this is Singapore. The PAP organized a referendum in Singapore where they wanted to join Malaysia or so on, right? That's the only referendum I know related to Malaysia Agreement 1963 or before the formation of Malaysia. And of course, I have also written that in my article also once that you should give a right to Sabah and Sarawak in the referendum. And of course, Scotland is always the reference, you know what I mean? But I think
I think a referendum may also become relevant if, I'm not advocating this, but if the issue of cessation should come up again, that is something I think, whilst we are not advocating for it here, if the mood on the ground in Sabah and Sarawak reaches a point where people have begun to feel that there's really no hope of getting Putrajaya to deliver on what was promised in 1963, I think in this day and age, secession is something that must be open to the people, and the best way would be to gauge their views through a referendum. But
Okay,
as I
my,
said,
my
I don't.
comment. I think this secession thing is actually out of frustration. The real Malaysians in Malaysia today are Sabah and Sarawak because we were born through that. But Malaysia is still in the 1957 Merdeka period. Okay, they have not moved on. We are the real Malaysians because we came together 1963. Okay. And we only recognized Malaysia Day in 2019 by Najib Razak and became a public holiday. Okay.
Right.
All right. So this secession thing is out of frustration rather than a real feeling that they want to move out. Right.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
But I like to touch a little bit on the geopolitics of Borneo. Okay. Now, Borneo is shared between three nations. Okay. Brunei, Indonesia, and Malaysia, okay? And we have a long history with Indonesia, Kalimantan, confrontation days and all that. Now they're moving the capital to Kalimantan, all right? Which is our next door neighbor. Where do you think the geopolitics will shift? With China claiming South China Sea, and we are moving, we are distancing ourselves from Kuala Lumpur more and more. Not because we want to, but because the policies that are created and that made us further away from the capital, we will lean towards Indonesia, all right, in terms of economy and political development, right? And it's so easy because why? The culture is the same. Cakap sama, bahasa sama. Culturally, we are linked, and our borders are open lah. Tada fencing ke apa tu, it's just the border. All right. So macam Sarawak pun Iban and Murud Sobat cross because they have families on both sides. Okay. So KL has to watch out for this. I mean, are you driving us further away from the capital and push us towards Kalimantan and so on, and towards China's expansion? All right.
Right.
So China is willing to come in anytime to develop our infrastructure. All right.
I'm sure.
So I just want to mention that, the geopolitics of it.
I think that's an interesting enough topic, Joe, for another evening and a discussion on that and that alone. I noted a comment here from Charles. He says, blame the politicians from Sabah and Sarawak. Well, Charles, in 2010, when I heard that comment that orang Sabah, orang Sarawak dianiayai orang Malaya, I pointed out to them that the truth was this: orang Sabah, orang Sarawak, and orang Malaya dianiayai UMNO Barisan Nasional, tetapi mustahil tanpa penglibatan tokoh-tokoh politik Sabah dan Sarawak. And that's the truth. And I think the people of Sabah and Sarawak are not blind to this. But this is where I think 14GE was so important that the people of Semenanjung, the people of Sabah and Sarawak, whatever the motivation, for the first time were united in trying to bring about change. Maybe for different reasons, but there's a need for us to do that again. What I'm hoping this round with our second pillar, reform pillar, to draw attention to MA 63 and the deprivation to Sabah and Sarawak, because I think we, the people of Semenanjung, this time must take a bigger interest in ensuring that the government doesn't just, do the usual creating of committees and just delay the whole thing. Enough of that.
Yeah, so I think let me clarify a little bit. Okay, because I work with a lot of West Malaysians, NGO and all that. I think the tendency for us is to blame the West Malaysians for everything, for all the sins. And the West Malaysians, in many forums, they have attacked me to say, hey, you the guys also, your leaders also, which is true. Okay, now come to this election. All right, we the tendency again is to blame West Malaysia. But you got the vote. You got the power to vote. I got power one vote. Why are we bringing in BN? Why you want to elect GRS as the government again, who are connected with UMNO, BN? Why? We should ask ourselves, all right? Because we also we have to accept the blame. We are not united. Okay, we're talking about Borneo block sekarang. Okay, Sabah Sarawak. Shafi is moving this Borneo block. I like the idea. I mean,
I like the idea too.
Borneo block is not new. It's not new.
Yes.
Okay? All right. Yeah. So,
but it has to become impactful, Joe.
Yeah, but we have to be honest with ourselves also, Haris, kan? We cannot blame West Malaysian for all our sins. Right.
Yes.
Right. We have to take our own responsibility by our hands and say, okay, look.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But this is where I'm saying, I think now I want the collective, especially in Semenanjung. This is what we in Semenanjung try to do for you guys over there, Joe. Is that when the politicians, when the candidates come knocking on our door, item 2 on our reform list, take this seriously. All right. So to the extent that we can, I want to see us collectively come to pressure to see justice finally done in Sabah and Sarawak.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, you talk about the block coming up in Borneo. I think it is long overdue that Borneo needs to speak with one voice.
Yeah.
You know, and flex your muscles this time around. Okay. There is a comment here left by Mazliani to everyone that the 40% growth assessor is finally appointed, independent assessor. It isn't. You know, Mazliani, I think, as Joe pointed out, there's no controversy in this provision. It's in the Constitution. So it is, you know, I think it is, we have seen time and time again, this, you know, running around the mulberry bush and just trying to buy time with committee upon committee upon committee. I don't think what we need is we need a team of accountants to look at and say, this is what is due for this year, total up, bila mau bayar. Itu saja. You know, and we don't need committees for that. And that is why I'm saying, I like the way you've broken it down, Joe. Give us money, give us autonomy. Habis. Yang lain tu kita boleh bincang kemudian. Give us these two immediately, and I think this is what we need to push for. My friends, those of you in Semenanjung, candidates will come knocking on your door. Look at the second pillar, MA 63, giving to Sabah and Sarawak what is overdue without further delay. Push and press this point. Okay, I will be holding town hall meetings for Petaling Jaya, for Segambut. Segambut is planned for this Friday. I'm going to brainstorm with Hanayo on how we can realize pillar 2, in fact, all the pillars. We are going to be doing the same town hall meets for a few other constituencies. With all of them, we will be bringing these up. How do they intend to make this a reality? And we don't want to listen about committees. Thank you, Joe. You have very nicely nailed it down to 2: autonomy, development funds. Friends, do you all have anything else you all want to perhaps raise with Joe? I don't know when is the next opportunity that Joe and I can come before you. Anything else you want to raise? I've not had anything sent to me from the YouTube channel. Investment to KL Selangor need not to be concentrated year in, year out. Must focus on the 3 poorest states and wilayas. We have, you know, Albert, yes, you have your point, but I think what we need to understand is for the longest time, people in Sabah and Sarawak have had to watch news footage of Semenanjung where they see highways and roads being built, whereas they still have to travel by water, by dirt road. There's no metal roads. In Sarawak, it's even worse. I remember when I was in Batang Air in 2009. It's scary. All right. So I think it's no longer about talking about how much development money can we provide for. No, as Joe has said, Constitution says 40% repatriate back. Habis cerita lah.
Okay, let me come in a little bit.
Please, Joe. Yes, please.
I think it's good that we have this conversation. I mean, there are real examples. Okay, Puan Mazliani, I know her. She's a lawyer. Okay, they look at from the lawyer
Yes,
and that's going to take ages. Okay, and I can give you one example. Okay, because we cannot look at just the legal aspects of it. Okay, we have to look at the political solution, which is faster. And I give you an example: the sales tax, petroleum sales tax in Sarawak. And I just met a Petronas guy this morning by chance, and we discussed it again. The 5% sales tax was a political solution, okay, where Sarawak claimed in court. They went to court, and they won in the first round, judicial review. The court was in their favor, Sarawak government, okay, and they said, okay, they're entitled to the 5%. Petronas want to take it to the higher courts to appeal, but because of the 18 seats which GPS Sarawak held, and which the ruling government is dependent on, they had to accede to that request. So Somaidin settled it out of court by saying, we will pay them, that 3.2 billion, whatever, owed in the sales petroleum tax. Now, this is an example of political solution, okay? Because when I talked to Petronas guys, he confirmed that the president, Wan Zul, at that time, president of Petronas, who happens to be a friend of mine also, I know him through working with him and all that for Sabah State government. He was removed unceremoniously, okay? And this is an example of political solution now, which is faster to me. Not negotiate over legal clauses will take you donkey years. You go to court, sometimes appeal up 10 years before you get any solution. Like I said, I'm not getting younger every day. I want to see something done now, all right, that I can at least go to my grave. I'm at peace to say that Sabah Sarawak has been granted this amount for their development. And I'm happy for the people of Sabah and Sarawak for that. Okay, so that's one way of looking at it, not only legal.
Right. I think I'm in total agreement with you, Joe. Yeah, the legal avenues are there, but my own experience through the courts is that it will take a long, protracted process. It has to be more political, and it has to be finding the political will to address the strength that's coming from, in my view, the Borneo Bloc.
Okay, let me talk about this thing, because I'm a researcher. I'm also an analyst. Before you write something, you need to analyze, understand the figures. Okay, if you look at the federal budget, 300 over billion and all that. Okay, and you talk it. I mean, people have to understand this. What is the revenue part? What is the expenditure part of the federal government? How much of that money is Petronas contribution? Last year was 50 billion. So 50 billion for 300 over 250 billion budget is quite a lot, big chunk, about 20% of the contribution. All right. So we have to look in that perspective. And then when they say, Tunku Zafrul on mouth in Parliament, we cannot afford to pay. Okay, Sabah Sarawak. And Lim Guan Eng, when we tackled him on the 20% which he promised, tak ada duit. When Mahathir says, when we asked Mahathir that time, they kata, you will make Petronas bankrupt. So we have to be pandai sikit lah. I mean, they're saying they don't have the money to pay, which is true. If it runs the big trillions and all that backdated 22 years, you kata tadi, they don't have the money to pay. All right. So this is where the political leaders have to come in and say, okay, you cannot pay now. Macam bank lah, you come in, you cannot pay for your property now. You already in default. Let's sit down together. Okay, instead of 11 billion, I want 30 billion. Okay, this year. Sure, you can afford 30 billion. Petronas just give you 50 billion. Okay, give me the 30 billion, you keep the 20 billion lah. All right. So if we're going to follow all these technical things and all that, like we mentioned, we agree, go to court berapa tahun and all that, right? So we have to use our head lah, work out the numbers and all that. And you can see they cannot pay. All right, because if they give us that money, then they have to give less to Selangor ke other tempat. But we have to insist. Time is on our side. Time is now. All right. So let's give us the money now. Right. Not the 11 billion every budget. We want more than that.
I think you all have to. I mean, you all have been nice enough for so long. It's about time you look after yourselves, right?
Exactly.
And whilst yes, you've been very, very transparent in saying, look, they definitely cannot pay. They cannot pay the entire amount, but let's hear your proposal, and your proposal has to come ASAP.
Yep.
You know, and you know, just like a lawyer advising a client who's facing a defaulting tenant, take what you can first, rather than not see anything at all. Those are things that I think can be slowly worked out, but you must first get that commitment to start to repatriate monies. You know, and I think that's something that we need to look at. Now, what I would like to say is this. Members of the audience, you might be from Sabah, you might be Sarawak, or you might be from Semenanjung. What I'm going to ask is this, as I said, candidates in the next 12 days, 13 days will be coming to you and asking for your vote. You heard Joe. Now, this is where you can do your part to bring this up and say, look, if you are standing in Sabah, standing in Sarawak, what are you going to do to overcome this? You heard about Joe talking about revenue should be coming in and autonomy. We want to hear from them. And we want to at least hear from them how they propose to support efforts so that we can work together collectively. Now, we all have to do our part. I'm going to do my part, but you also need to do your part. All right? Joe, before I wrap up, it's 8:46. And I picked up here two very important points, the revenue development funds and the autonomy. I don't want to go into the 20% oil royalty as an offer that's coming now, because I had even quarreled with Jong Tek Lee and Jeffrey Kitingan before, when Pakatan Harapan brought this up dulu. Okay, because to me, before you go down to the rakyat and tell the rakyat this is an offer, please let the rakyat also know what they would be entitled to in full. Because they want to know what they're giving up. You know, so we can come back to that. Anything else you would like to add, Joe, before I wrap up this evening session?
Yeah, I think I covered the gist of the Sabah Sarawak
very well,
right? And all I like to say, this election to me is still the same from my side, from Sabah side, because people don't see the. I monitor all the social media and all that to get my feedback, and I can see again we are not united, You know, people are promoting the Bonyo block to get our rights back. That's the correct direction, I would say. Tapi the whole thing is that Malaya will always try to split us, divide and rule. They will play Sarawak against Sabah, and then internal state parties, they will play against each other. If you look at GRS, it's very confusing. You know, all the scale parties, and then on the side ada BN UMNO, and then banyak friendly party. So at the end of the day, who forms the government KL is not a direct reflection of the state component makeup lah. Right. So for me, I don't like to be a pessimist, but last 10 years I became a pessimist. I like to see some positive side lah, you know. And but hopefully this time around, if Anwar Ibrahim comes back with Pakatan Harapan, and I would agree with you, because I think Pakatan Harapan is probably the best bet for me lah, compared to the other side. Okay, I have no choice anyway, right? So I will go with Pakatan Harapan. But the point is, they were given a chance once. Okay, if you look at the manifesto 218 and the manifesto 222, with respect to Sabah Sarawak as one of the pillars or several pillars, they're chanting the same thing lah. Revenue, autonomy, oil and gas. Okay, but I still, what's ringing in my ear still, Mahathir kata, ala, he give you Petronas bankrupt. Lim Goh ini kata, sorry lah, no money. You know, that is ringing in my ear still. And these are the culprits that are going to bring us back to PH.
I understand. I understand your skepticism, Joe.
Yeah.
I hope that maybe 6 months from now, I will be in a position to say, Joe, I told you so. I told
Okay,
you we
good.
could do it. Okay, I hope, and I hope you also hope the same.
Yeah. Okay.
Now,
We got a lot of work to do. That's it.
we
Yeah.
do have a lot of work to do. But I will be positive in my attitude. What we have done is this. I understand your sentiment. I have basically said I do not wish to listen to the manifestos of any of the calon coming to us. We have our 5 pillars. You listen to us. I don't want to listen to promises. Then later, somebody says, "Oh, we actually didn't really mean what we said." Tak payah. We are going to tell you what we want, and the fact that it is number 2, our pillar number 2, we are taking this very, very seriously. I hope those on the ground, those of you who are here with us tonight, I hope you will all do your part. We will be coming out with short videos of Joe's points. Help us to take these videos out and share it with your family and friends. Okay, Joe, last 1 minute I give you before I wrap this up.
Yeah, well, thank you very much again for inviting me to have this chat with you. And
My pleasure, Joe.
I like this format one-to-one. We instead of 3 or 4 speakers saying their piece and all that. I think it's always good to have a one-to-one chat, heart-to-heart chat, and I especially appreciate West Malaysians taking interest in us. Okay, because that shows our brotherly love between across the South China Sea that divides us and separates us. And then we hope to get rid of all these issues about race, religion, and so on, and come together and then talk about the specifics. And I'm sure that in any pie, we can always share. In any cake, we can always share fairly. All right?
Yes.
And be generous about it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for inviting me, Haris.
Joe, thank you. On behalf of the audience, I want to thank you for making time to share your thoughts with us. This is very, very helpful. On my part, I'm extremely serious about slowly but surely bringing an end to the injustice that has been inflicted on the people of Sabah and Sarawak since independence, since the creation of the Federation of Malaysia. I hope that this is at least will take us some way to have a better understanding of what are the important things. Tell the candidates for coming to get your vote. We heard Joe Samad tell us they need money. It's simple. They need money, and they must have the right to self-rule and not have Putrajaya dictate. Autonomy must be given to them. These are the 2 things that we want to see in the next government. All right, work with me on this. And Joe, I look forward to other many issues that perhaps on a later date after the elections, perhaps. If you're coming down to KL, let's meet up for a cup of coffee.
Okay, well, do.
Yeah, your chief minister then, Shafi Afdal, was very kind to lift the ban on me. I was banned by Musa Aman before. So one good thing he did for me when he was chief minister was he lifted the ban.
Okay.
So if you can come to KL, maybe I can fly to Kota Kinabalu and enjoy your coffee and your talk.
Welcome. Please come over.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right.
All right. And members of the audience, you have been extremely patient, extremely attentive. I thank you for that. I hope we have been able to address your comments and questions. On that note, I am going to call this session to a close. Thank you very much, everybody, and good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Haris.
Right.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Good night, Albert.
Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you, Ben.